Good afternoon. I'm Molly Young from the Miami University Alumni Association. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this session of Virtual Alumni Weekend. We're connecting Miamians all across the country for fun and engaging programming and conversations and celebrating you, our alumni. Our session today is a spotlight on Greek life with Dr. Kim Vance and Adam Drawley. Dr. Kim Vance is Director of Student Activities and the Cliff Alexander Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life. Kim has a bachelor's in history, a master's in public administration, and a doctor of education and educational leadership from Northern Kentucky University. At NKU, she served as an assistant director of student life responsible for Greek life and registered student organizations from 2004 to 2013, and the director of fraternity and sorority life from 2013 to 2019. As the director, Kim develops and implements strategic initiatives to enhance activities and programming on campus, as well as the fraternity and sorority life community. Adam Drawley joined the Office of Student Activities and Cliff Alexander Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life as Associate Director in summer of 2019. He received his Bachelor of Arts in History from Valparaiso University and Master of Science in College and Student Personnel from Illinois State University. As a professional in student affairs, he has worked in fraternity and sorority life and student conduct. Please remember that you can submit questions and comments during the live session by clicking Ask a Question below the video. And with that, I will turn it over to Kim and Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. We are excited to be here. So I'm Kim, and you heard all of that. And the majority of my experience with Miami has been the pandemic, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. I had the great opportunity to work side by side with Adam at Northern Kentucky University, and now we decided to put the band back together, and here we are at Miami. So I'm going to kick it to Adam.
Yeah, great to have you all here on this sunshiny Saturday. Excited to be back with you all again. It was Kim and I last year, so hopefully we've got some people returning to us in this virtual presentation, and we'll go ahead and get going with the next slide.
So just wanted to kind of talk with you all about our office changes. First of all, imagine that. It's just been a busy time. A little bit about the year in review. Hopefully we do have folks that were with us last year, and we can talk a little bit about how everything went. And then we want to give you kind of some ideas about what we think is going to happen moving forward as we exit the trying time of COVID-19 and move towards something that's more typical. I don't know that it'll ever be what people called normal again, but it should be more typical. Then we want to spend a little time with you talking about opportunities to connect and engage both with our office and with the collegiate members of our chapters. And we absolutely want to give you guys an opportunity to ask us questions, because we're hoping that you have some, and we're hoping that we have the answer. So right off the bat, wanted to let you know that we are now the Center for Student Engagement, Activities, and Leadership. And that center is comprised of the Cliff Alexander Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life. It is also comprised of our Student Activities and Programming Office. And we have now the Wilkes Institute for Leadership and Service as a part of our team. It is such an awesome opportunity to pull all of those facets of student engagement together, working collaboratively. So probably you have a lot of questions about, well, what does that mean for direct support for the community and for the chapters? Well, I'm the director. I will be working directly with our chapters and Adam, and going to talk a little bit about some additional staff members that will be working with us. Adam is our associate director and will be providing direct support mostly to our IFC community, but other areas as needed. Drew Davis is an assistant director for the entire center, and he will be working directly with our treasurers and specific officers within the councils. And then we are so happy to have Alyssa Ciengo. Did I say it right, Adam?
Yep,
Got it.
right.
Alyssa Ciengo is our brand new assistant director. She just joined us at the beginning of this month. She will be providing direct advisement to the Panhellenic community. And we just received word that we are going to be able to post an additional assistant director position. And that comes in just the right timing for us, because that position is going to have a focus on leadership and working with the entire community and connecting them with our friends in Wilkes that have now joined the team. Also providing some assistance, advising assistance, probably to MPHC. And we think we're going to be forming a new culturally based organization council soon. And then we always have Elisa. So if you serve in a chapter advisory role with your organization, you have received an email from Elisa. Thank goodness for her, because she keeps all of our data straight, helps us keep our information flow going, and she's still going to be with us, helping keep us all on the right path forward. So we also want to spend some time talking to you guys a little bit about, and think you probably have questions about membership. Specifically, how did this past year impact membership? Want to talk a little bit about GPAs and what that looks like as we're coming out of a couple of semesters where students had different options for learning. Some of it was remote, some of it was they could take more pass-fail or credit non-credit classes. And then finally, we want to talk to you about how they did with philanthropy and service at a time when very often we weren't allowed to gather in groups or work with some of the populations that our chapters normally work with when they are engaged in service.
So our membership is actually slightly up from last year. We are at 5,320 members at the close of this past spring semester, and 48 chartered chapters, which is 2 more than at this point last year. Some of that came with the Interfraternity Council. We gained a new multicultural Greek chapter in Alpha Psi Lambda. They were chartered in April. Our Interfraternity Council is made up of 22 chartered chapters. We have Phi Delta Theta. The Alpha chapter has recently rechartered back. They colonized in 2019. Very typically took them about 18 months to return and receive their charter. So they're very excited, and they're moving back into their facility on Talawanda. We are excited to announce that Phi Kappa Psi is going to be returning to campus in the spring of 2022 as our next formal expansion. And we've been in communication with their headquarters and think that it's a great time to bring them back to campus. And then Kappa Sigma has been working for probably the last 3 semesters, but more intensely this past spring semester to establish an interest group. And they'll be working over the next 2-ish years or so, working towards a charter. So they, at some point, will move back into their facility, but that's a little bit farther down the road than what Phi Delta Theta has planned. As I mentioned, Alpha Psi Lambda is a co-ed Latino fraternity. They got a lot of interest this past spring and chartered in April, so we're really excited to support them and to bring them into the community. Our Panhellenic Council has 16 chartered NPC organizations and 2 associate chapters. The 2 associate chapters are Kappa Phi and Sigma Lambda Gamma. And I know we always get a bunch of questions about Panhellenic recruitment and how that went. Panhellenic recruitment went extremely well this year. It was conducted via Zoom, 100% via Zoom. At the close of Panhellenic recruitment, our average chapter size was 213, which did not see any dip at all. There was a slight decrease in the women who were interested and signed up for formal recruitment, but there was a slight increase in the number of women who joined chapters. Our NPHC organizations, our National Panhellenic Council, we have 7 chartered chapters, and we exclamated intake there because, as some of you may know, maybe our members of those organizations, when COVID shut down the world last March, a lot of any intake process or recruitment process that an NPHC organization was conducting at the time was screeched to a halt, and then the national organizations put on the brakes for any recruitment or intake for the fall semester this past fall. So this past spring, things obviously started to open up a little bit more, and we had 18 members join our NPHC council. Our Omega Psi Phi chapter brought in 2 members. Our Alpha Phi Alpha chapter brought in 2. Our Zeta Phi Beta chapter brought in 2. Our Delta Sigma Theta chapter brought in 5, and our Alpha Kappa Alpha chapter brought in 7. So we're really excited that our council grew. I think they pretty much doubled in size, and some of the organizations really needed to conduct intake as there were some seniors who were graduating, and they needed that intake to persist. A little quick note about Alpha Psi Lambda, they chartered with 7 members. So they are on the smaller side of chapters, but as I said, there's a lot of interest on campus, so we expect them to grow as well. Kim mentioned grades. We saw a spike or an inflation in GPAs last spring, so spring 2020 and fall 2020. We saw a spike in grades. Grades were significantly, in some cases, chapter grades were a quarter. Chapter averages were a quarter, or maybe sometimes close to a half a point higher than what they had been for previous semesters. And it was mainly due to the grace that the university was allowing it's for students taking credit, no credit classes. So they had until right up until finals to decide whether or not a class was going to be taken for credit or for no credit. So and basically pass fail. So this spring, much to some of our students' chagrin, the academics reset that back to normal operations, with that decision being required a little bit earlier in the semester. Some deadlines reverted back to where they traditionally are. And so what we saw this spring was our GPA, our community GPA, chapter GPAs returned to normal. So for those of you who are advisors and have gotten grid reports, don't freak out because the GPA is significantly lower than last fall. It is across the board, and I'm sure across the country, every community experienced a very similar experience. So the spring 2021 GPA average for our entire community, which was a 3.37, which I want to acknowledge that is still outstanding considering the size of our community being at over 5,300 students. So we're really proud of what our students achieve in the classroom, and it definitely shows with the community GPA.
So, a big part of membership and of this experience is engaging with philanthropic and service opportunities. It's a pillar of our community. It's pretty much a pillar of everybody's individual membership in the national, international organizations. That's part of what we do. We come together to give back and to help others. And so this past year provided, I would say, some challenges as far as how are we going to do what we do. And maybe we can't do everything that we normally would do the same way. But because our students are so awesome and thoughtful and creative, they were able to do some really neat stuff in the community. This is a photo of Greek Spring Clean. And so you'll notice, that they're wearing masks. They did a lot of work out in the community. We could probably throw up several more pictures of groups interacting in and around Oxford or Butler County. They really relied very much on the ability to do things outdoors once the weather allowed for that as an option. But when the weather was rough and it was still winter and, it was not possible to visit senior citizens' homes or retirement communities or schools the way that they typically would in person, they transitioned pretty well. So I don't want to leave anyone out, and I am certain that there is an example for every organization represented on our campus, but I want to just give a few highlights. First of all, IFC is finalizing an endowed scholarship to award. They made an initial $25,000 contribution. A couple of examples from the fraternities with regards to philanthropy. Fiji raised $32,000 for Drop the Puck, which goes to Luna Cares. So they were able to do that. Lambda Chi Alpha raised over $7,000 for their house director, who lost a child in they worked really hard to try to help someone that they're close to. Alpha Delta Phi raised $2,000 through their pickleball tournament. Pickleball evidently is a thing now. And so that had a lot of interest. Sigma Chi, I think, is well on their way to their $50,000 goal for the Huntsman Cancer Research Institute. Our Pikes raised money for Cancer Free Kids and also Starfire Cincy, which is an organization dedicated to building inclusive communities. Chi Omega raised $16,000 for Wish Week. Kappa Alpha Theta raised over $3,000 for CASA. Alpha Phi had, I think it was about $35,000 toward their Red Dress Gala, which could not happen the way that it typically does, but they still managed to do that. In addition, members of our TEAC chapter wrote over 5,000 letters for kids in St. Jude cancer treatment, and they also spent a weekend cleaning up around Oxford and racked up about 120 service hours doing so. A lot of our chapter members served as mask ambassadors uptown. They collaborated with Associated Student Government and staffed a booth and handed out masks to whoever wanted them. They're really nice Miami masks. And we're encouraging people to make good choices so that we could get back to a place where we could be in person. In PhD chapters, we're able to continue with virtual fundraising, but they also continue to collect school supplies, blankets, and other items for various community agencies. Some of the PhD chapters were able to continue to engage with Cincinnati area school children. So maybe it wasn't in-person reading, but it was reading over Zoom or providing some mentorship over Zoom. We had a lot of blood drives, several school supply drives for Talawanda, donated care items for Oxford Women's Center. Tri Delta made homemade cards for children at St. Jude's. FIMU did a virtual book drive for the Children's Hospital, Cincy Children's Hospital. Our Sammys wrote a bunch of cards for the local nursing home and things like that. So ADPI worked actually collaboratively with MPHC to make craft packs for the Ronald McDonald House in Cincinnati. So even though they can do what they necessarily always do in the same way, they remained committed to being active, engaged members of the local and broader community and doing good work for a good cause. So we're super excited that they were able to do that. Don't quite have all of our totals for philanthropy dollars and service hours yet, but hope to be able to post that soon. And I think now we can talk a little bit about community highlights. So, all right, the reality of it is that COVID was hard, right? The restrictions were difficult. When you're asking folks that are in the prime of their social life to not be social, there are going to be some hiccups and hurdles around the way, right? So they did a pretty good job. And the times where they had a hard time sticking to the rules, which were a big ask for a lot of us, not just 19 and 20-year-olds. But when they had some slip-ups, they had too many people, they had folks over at their house that they shouldn't have, they were pretty quick to acknowledge and take responsibility and put things in place to try to make sure that it didn't happen again. And one of the things I really want to congratulate them for is as we were coming to the end of this semester and things were kind of starting to open, but not completely open. And there were a lot of questions like, are we allowed to have our formals, and which typically involves a trip for a weekend. And how do we do that? They did some really responsible stuff, and it wasn't because we told them that they had to. We may have provided some advice and encouragement, but they were really good about putting things in place as far as requiring members to be tested before they left, requiring members to be tested if they went out of state and came back, requiring members that were not feeling well to self-select out unless they had a negative COVID test, just kind of keeping really good track of contacts and who was around who. And then as vaccines became available for them in the Oxford community and even the counties surrounding Butler County, they jumped on that and did their part and really were very diligent about helping to stop the spread. For obvious reasons, they want to be back in person, and they knew that that was something that they were going to have to do. So I just wanted to take a minute and kind of give you guys the information on that. We asked them to do some tough things, and it wasn't always easy, but at the end of the day, the majority of the time they stepped right up to the plate. So Adam, do you want to add in about some of the cool stuff they did?
Yeah. So I wanted to pause right here to highlight the picture in the background there. That is from Acropolis this past year. Normally and traditionally is held offsite at a camp. We take about 100 participants and about 25 mentors and a couple other people out and do a full weekend, Friday night, all day Saturday and Sunday morning of leadership development, emerging leader, values-based leadership conversations, and a full curriculum that is absolutely outstanding and is 100% student-led. Obviously, we headed into last summer not knowing if it was things were going to turn around enough for us to be able to do that. They didn't. So we persisted and we pushed through and came up with a format to still offer an in-person small group setting. So we had basically 10 groups of 10 in several different classroom buildings around campus. So they could still have that in-person. Granted, they were wearing masks, but they were still able to be in person and connect with other community members. And this picture is of our 3 directors who basically facilitated the entire program via Zoom. So this is a behind the scenes shot here. And so our students really worked hard to come up with creative solutions like this to advance another keystone leadership program in our community. Was held 100% virtually, and it is long and it does get taxing sitting on Zoom for 5-6 hours at a time. So our students really did still buy in. They still put in the work. They came up with creative solutions to get people together when they could. A couple individual highlights. Our Panhellenic Association and National Panhellenic Council collaborated and put together this Women of Excellence Awards program where they awarded 7 women across campus. It was an entire university. The awards went out to the entire university. Applications came in, and one of our, they awarded, I believe, 7 women across campus who made the cut on their criteria. One of them was Kendall Fletcher, our former National Panhellenic Council president. She was honored with that award. Molly McNamara, our former Panhellenic president, was awarded the President's Distinguished Service Award and was actually selected by NPC to lobby in Columbus for Collins Law. So she's been working really hard, getting letters of support and working with NPC at the national level. And then Pat Nolan, our former chapter president and now Miami alum of Sigma Chi, received the Ohio Province Balfour Award, and that makes him eligible for the International Balfour Award. So very exciting things. And those are just a couple examples, but we have a lot of other students who were honored with awards and received various distinctions. as they came through the year. We do anticipate many of our chapters to receive national awards this summer as conventions and conclaves get going here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be sure to post those awards and those honors on our Instagram page. So give us a follow. We'll put up that information here a little bit later, but we'll make sure to highlight those chapters because as Kim highlighted, the work didn't stop. Even though they may not have been able to meet as a full chapter throughout the entire year, the work in the chapters didn't stop. So what will this year look like? We anticipate things to look more typical. I know that is pretty broad and gives us a little bit of an out. I think students are, if we say more typical, they expect worst case scenario, but we're still waiting on some CDC guidance and some other decision makers, both at the state and university level, to give us all the parameters. I do think that they're waiting, as they did last summer, waiting to kind of the last moment to make their final decisions. But right now, we are planning to host in-person events and activities, mostly outdoors, and probably some things will be limited capacities or grab and go sort of activities. But we obviously encourage all chapter members to follow Miami policies once they are announced. Panhellenic recruitment will likely have a hybrid model of some Zoom and virtual at the early in the process for the first couple of rounds, and then transition into in-person activities for that second weekend when we are hoping to have an in-person bid day, which may be a little bit more spread out in the past. So a lot of our large events like Mega Fair, Advance, Acropolis, our Tops 5K, and Puddle Pull for this fall semester we are planning those to be in person, planning them slightly differently, but again, they're back to in person, which I know a lot of students are really excited about, and our staff is really excited about. I'm very energized about being able to finally meet some of the students that I've been working with for the last year. Being able to meet them in person. There are some things that we will keep and will remain virtual because Zoom worked for some things, for some meetings, for some other things. I think it provided an access and an accessibility to in ways that in-person meetings kind of box us in a little bit. So there will be some things that we will keep virtual. I think some of our advisor trainings or our advisor meetings, we may keep those virtual. We may do some in-person things, but we will always be offering a virtual option because we know our advisors are traveling from Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, or further. So we want to be able to provide those opportunities for our entire volunteer advisor crew out there. And the last thing this next year brings is a loss of institutional memory. So what I mean by that is we're 16 months removed from just about anything happening the quote normal way. And our students kind of forgot how things normally go, which is a good and a bad thing. So we're going to be spending the year in this fall semester, probably doing a little bit more training, doing a little bit more catch up with our students, making sure that they remember those standard operating procedures for in-person social events, and they remember what checks and balances are out there when they're planning things, and what other community partners they need to work with when they're doing something on campus or when they need to schedule a chapter meeting. We're going to be doing and having to do a lot more training with that. So the learning curve with our chapter leaders and our community leaders will be in full force at the beginning of this fall semester and probably throughout the year as we kind of redefine how our year looks. But this loss of institutional memory also sort of gives us an opportunity to reshape and rethink some of our messaging, our communication, and some of our major programs, and make adjustments with a little bit more ease. And maybe since our students don't remember how things looked back in fall of 2019, a lot of the chapter leaders at that point are now graduated. So some moves and some forward progress that we've been hoping to make with the community can hopefully be a little accelerated because of that. So we're excited. We are, would say, at a place right now where we are cautiously optimistic for the fall semester, but mainly really excited to get back to in-person stuff.
And so now we want to kind of wrap up by talking to you all a little bit about ways that you can connect with our office, with our staff, with our students, with our programming. So we're hoping that during Move In Miami this year, which I think, hopefully I'm not going to get this date wrong, I think it's August 19th. And that's going to feel a lot more like what I think Move In Miami has felt like, as students, sounds like, will actually be moving in on that date. We're hoping that you'll join us and support the Jerry Miller Fund, the Dr. Nault Scholarship, and or the Cliff Endowment. And then, of course, your chapter leadership funds and scholarship funds. I would say that, there was a lot of doom and gloom and pessimism about finances and things like that, because we didn't know what was going to happen over this past 16 months. And actually, it's not, the worst case scenarios didn't happen, but the reality of it is that we have a lot of students that had some rough patches because parents lost jobs. They lost a job that they were counting on either, last summer or during this academic year. And so there's still going to be some need out there. So we would love for you to connect with us. We're very excitedly planning what we're going to do. So be ready for some communication from our office. There we go. It's August 19th. I was right. The other thing, we would encourage you to follow the Instagram accounts that are listed on the screen. That seems to be the preferred method for our students to shout out, brag, communicate, announce, tag, whatever it is that they do. I do not Instagram, but they do. So they love it. And that's probably the best way to stay up to date on how things are moving forward for things like Greek Week or plans that they might have for Family Weekend, or even things that might happen during homecoming. So as Adam mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact that virtual works for some things. We really, really want to encourage you all to connect with us, and connect with our chapters, connect with our students. The thing that we learned on the advising front with the Zoom and virtual stuff is that actually works. The students in some ways prefer that because it's a snapshot in time. You can be in and out pretty quick. It can be very organized and targeted as far as we're going to talk about these things. And it also gives them some anonymity when they're meeting and it's just you and them on a call. So they may be more forthcoming with issues or concerns or things like that. We do also know for sure that there is a time and a place where that in-person being connected physically in the same space is required. And so we would encourage you to engage with the chapters. And that doesn't mean that you have to drive to Oxford all of the time. It can be a blend, and it probably works best when it's a blend. And there's just a strategic plan for when are the high need times that somebody needs to be in Oxford. But I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that we've had is the ease of which they use the technology, and they don't want to sit on Zoom for 8 hours a day in classes and workshops and this and that and the other. But a 30-minute Zoom conversation with somebody that can help them out with something that they're struggling with chapter leadership, very, very effective. So please consider that. And even if you're not ready to jump in and be an advisor for a specific officer, there are always, I think, within the chapters opportunities to say, hey, I would like to mentor somebody in the sophomore class that just joined. I would encourage you all, and we on our end are going to be doing more to encourage the alumni officers within the chapters to kind of re-engage with alumni, and all of us work together to re-engage with you. because we think we have some really neat opportunities, just like this virtual alumni weekend. We would love to have you in Oxford, but I will tell you it's hot as blue blazes, and I don't know if you can hear them, but there is like a swarm of cicadas right outside of my office window, and they are deafening. And a week ago they were cute, and now I think we're all over the cicadas. So I'm going to kick it to Adam to wrap up and talk a little bit about fraternity houses and what they might need.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about last year. Our fraternity houses are, I think, in addition to, if you're interested in coming back to Oxford, able to make it back to Oxford, please visit the chapter houses. As I mentioned, Phi Delta Theta is going to be moving back into their chapter facility. We have Alpha Chi Rho, a newer chapter, a newly chartered chapter as of a couple of years ago, is getting a formal chapter house this year. And so I know when I started in 2019, got some feedback that as people drove down Talawanda, there were some vacant houses, and it was really just kind of, it didn't seem very vibrant. But this year we anticipate every single fraternity house down Talawanda will be occupied, as well as down Sycamore. So I know that kind of boxes in most of our chapter houses there. So we will have all but one of our chapters being housed this year, which we're really excited about. But as with COVID, there was, I would say, a lot less oversight and less alumni advisors who were in those chapter houses, kind of keeping an eye on things. So I know I try to make it out to every chapter house each semester, at least once or twice, just to pop in and say hey to the guys who are there, and also to kind of keep tabs on how things are going. But I think COVID did also take a toll on the chapter houses. So if you are a member of an IFC fraternity, please reach out to your house corporation and see if there's maybe some spots that they might need assistance. I know several of our chapters do summer weekends, summer cleaning weekends. I don't know if they bring back undergrads or alumni, but those are also great opportunities to connect and just give back some of your time with the chapter. So I think we are ready for some questions. We will, as Kim said, we'll do our best to answer what we can with the knowledge we have at this point. Obviously, with COVID things, some of that is a moving target, but wanted to thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate you all taking the time to invest in this community. And I know from my experience, I really appreciate any alumni investment in the community and interest in the community. So thank you for doing that. And I look forward to hopefully seeing and meeting many of you back on campus during homecoming this year.
Great. Thank you both. It sounds like the Greek community did a really great job of staying sort of pointed and on their mission, even through COVID when so many things were lost. It really sounds like the year, despite all of the extraneous variables, was really a success, actually, given all of the little roadblocks in the way. So we do have a couple questions. Actually, we have several questions. I'm going to ask this one first because I feel like this might help through the answers of some of the other for our viewers. This actually would help me again here too. This comes from Terry. Can you please define the acronyms for those who may not know or remember IFC, MGC, MPHC, and perhaps give us a little clue what Pan-Hellenic means to the viewers?
Sure. Okay. So we'll start with Pan-Hellenic, which on this campus is commonly referred to as PA. Those are the initials. On some campus, you may hear somebody say Pan-Hell. We discourage that. We encourage them to say Pan-Hellenic Association or Pan-Hellenic. These are organizations that are joined together as part of a group called National Panhellenic Conference. So they are sororities. There are 26 international national organizations that are part of NPC. And on a campus, the collegiate grouping of those is called the Panhellenic Association. So that's Panhellenic, would be our traditional MPC sororities. On this campus, we have a couple of groups that don't have a council that they're a part of. And so because they are defined as women's organizations, they have associate membership with Panhellenic Association. So that's that. I'm going to move forward with MPHC. MPHC is also a national umbrella organization for the 9 different organizations that are a part of that particular council. There are both men's groups and women's groups, fraternities and sororities in those organizations. So it's National Pan, and then there's a hyphen Hellenic Council. So those groups, that is an umbrella organization that provides some guidance, support, and advocacy for the needs of that community. And then we are very excited because with the addition of Alpha Psi Lambda, we have enough chapters and energy now to begin the process of a 4th council on our campus. And so we're going to work with the students because we haven't identified which acronym is going to fit best. Is it going to be a culturally based organization council, or is it going to be a multicultural Greek council? So we will work with them to identify that, because one thing that policy with Miami says is that if you're going to have a fraternity or a sorority, they have to be affiliated with a council. And so I'm going to let Adam explain IFC and how that works.
Yeah, our IFC is our interfraternity council. There are, it's just fraternities. Traditionally, they are, a lot of times you may hear the NIC or some other affiliate organizations. That is the National Interfraternity Conference. There are a lot of IFC fraternities, probably close to 100 total potential IFC fraternities that could be on campus. But that is your traditional men's fraternity that might be on campus. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that might be included in there. A difference with our IFC fraternities and our Panhellenic sororities, or our Panhellenic Association and our Interfraternity Council, versus our National Panhellenic Council. Our National Panhellenic Council is those 9 organizations make up our historically Black Greek letter organizations. So those organizations provide specific opportunities to Black students on campus to affiliate, although they are not exclusive to those students. They offer membership to everybody, but they are historically Black Greek letter organizations.
Okay. Hey, thank you for the clarity. I know that when it comes to acronyms of any kind, it's oddly enough Greek to so many. So thank you very much for that. Let's see, next question. And this is a good one. So since so many students either didn't have a chance to attend orientation going into the pandemic, they didn't move to campus in the fall, and they, had to attend a virtual orientation, what have the chapters done to help support new students who may sort of, right from the front door felt so disconnected for so many reasons?
So I think there are a lot of answers to that question. And because none of us had a playbook for this, I think there was a lot of, I'm just to be very honest, there was a lot of kind of making it up as you went along. I will tell you that Panhellenic Association, when hosting their virtual recruitment, we were very diligent about making sure that students who were not on campus but were still taking all virtual classes, that they knew that they could participate. We had a lot of conversations with chapters about how are you going to welcome students in that may not be coming to campus on a regular basis. And I know different chapters did different things. And then as the semester went and people were able to be in public places more, as occupancies changed and restaurants and facilities were able to open a little bit more, they were trying to be very deliberate about making sure that people felt connected and knew that they could gather in small groups and those kinds of things. I can think of a couple of anecdotal things where I know that women who chose to join a Panhellenic chapter but were virtual and were not here in Oxford expressed some concerns about, like, I'm having a hard time, figuring out how I'm going to connect. And so we tried to be a conduit with the chapters when we heard about it to say, like, just, that's when a Zoom call works. Like, just make sure that person, knows what's going on. Even if students were here in Oxford, like as we were going through that formal recruitment process, their experience was not all that different until probably later in March than students who could have been living in Cleveland, because they weren't allowed to do anything and very few things were open. So they were really restricted. Oxford had an ordinance that no more than 10 people could be together. And so they just, we're hoping now to spend the summer working with students so that there is a lot of extra intentionality with the people that are going to be sophomores, of helping them gel with, because they will be in person and they will be physical. So, and that's, it's a change just for myself, like walking into large crowds. I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but I'm like, am I supposed to be here? What am I supposed to do? Like the mask ordinance dropped, but I'm still like looking in my pocket for my mask because we got trained to do things one way. And so we got to kind of relearn, what that looks like afterwards and meet people where they are comfortably. So yeah, it's going to be a lot, but I think they can do it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I know it was a difficult year for so many, particularly, our first years coming who really didn't have a litmus for what the experience was supposed to feel like. So it sounds like your students and your groups did a really great job. So this is sort of a related question. You spoke about virtual recruitment. Do you plan on keeping any aspects of virtual recruitment moving forward? I know that you plan to in some ways.
Yep. One thing that we're hoping to do in the fall is, and it's not formal recruitment, but it is part of the recruitment process for all of the organizations, regardless of what council, is give them places where they can have face time with students. So where they can see people and interact. Because people really don't join groups, they join people. They join folks that they've met, at this activity or whatever, or that's what makes them interested. So we're really excited that we think we're going to be able to do some of the things that we typically do to get students interested and asking questions. Is this experience something that I want to do? NPC, that's one of those acronyms we were talking about before, which is the umbrella governing body for our 26 Panhellenic Association organizations, of which there are 16 that participate in formal recruitment together on this campus. They have issued guidance encouraging first round of recruitment, or like the first chunk of recruitment, remain virtual. So we will probably, our welcome round, we did a lot last year and we'll have more time this year to get everybody prepped for it. But the chapters created videos, the potential new members created introductory videos that were guided. They had a lot of prompts and they were very short. They also answered some very in-depth essay questions and provided some information that way. And we're pretty certain, and this doesn't seem to be just us, that we retained a lot more women in the process because that was a lot less intimidating. Now we have heard, people are like, but I wanted to meet people and they never even met me. Well, they're going to get a chance to meet you in the fall when we're doing Sprite dates and things like that, cider at the seal and things that actually are in person. So probably the first weekend of recruitment will remain virtual, and that the welcome round will probably still just be the video stuff, and we're going to do some very intentional programming in the fall to help people put their best foot forward with those videos. And then the next round of recruitment will be conducted by Zoom. When we get to sisterhood and preference round, those really need to be in-person events, because that's kind of when it's getting serious about who is feeling like they match where. Right. Both from the chapter side and from the potential new members. So I know that was very wordy, but that's kind of where we're at now. And I would say with our benchmark institutions are probably making the same decision, even if they're doing recruitment in the fall.
Excellent. And I love the way you put that. People don't join groups, they join people. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Let's see. This question comes from Gil. He asked, is ZBT going to make a comeback to campus in the near future?
Potentially. I have had conversations with the headquarters of Zeta Beta Tau. And that was as recent as this past April. We had several conversations, and a lot of it was born out of some interest from undergraduates who are interested in reviving and bringing back ZBT. So we'll see. I would say the ball is in the court of the headquarters, and really a lot of it is driven by the interest that the undergraduates have. So for what I understand, there was a small group of undergraduates who reached out to their headquarters and said, hey, we want to bring this chapter back. And there were some preliminary conversations, but where we left it was, let's come back in the fall. Headquarters is going to circle back with that smaller group of guys and kind of see what motivation they have, if they're still interested, and then kind of proceed forward. So TBD on ZBT right now, but I do think, and our office operates if the undergraduate interest is there, we will support it. So we'll see what happens in the next 6 to 8 months.
Fantastic. Great answer. Thank you so much. TBD, that works. Let's see. I like this question. This is sort of going back to the beginning of your presentation. So how will the addition of the Wilkes Leadership Institute to your area help the Greek community? Will there be specific leadership opportunities offered?
So yes, and yes. First of all, they, Mary and Kristen, who are primarily assigned to that area, have some very strong skill sets and experiences and strengths. Part of Mary's role is community engagement, right? And one of the things that we're going to work on and that she is really excited about is providing some training and assistance and connection to community partners for our chapter and council level service and philanthropy chairs, and doing some work with them as far as like upping. We have capacity that we could expend, I think, differently to really make a difference for some community-based issues. And she is an amazing connection for that. So we're looking forward to that as just one example. There, I think, is going to be a lot of ability, especially if this next position comes online, to be more deliberate and offer more leadership experiences. So, right now with Advance and Acropolis, like those are the students in the fraternity and sorority community that you would expect to engage in leadership development. And so Adam and I have always talked about this even before we were here together at Miami, that we're trying to figure out how, and I need everybody to understand, I say this with love, how to have a leadership experience that's impactful for the wingnuts, And so we would say these are the students in our community that don't see themselves as leaders and maybe haven't figured out that they really can lead. Maybe they just need a little education, a little polish, a little encouragement, a little coaching. And so with Wilkes and their emphasis on strengths, the Clifton Strengths leadership development process, a lot of that has to do with some workshops and training and understanding what your strengths are, but then also some coaching on like how can you best use your strengths, or how can you expect to feel when you're in a difficult situation. So we're hoping to rely on those connections and adding that additional position to just get more capacity to be able to touch more humans within the FSL community, give them a pathway and an avenue to grow as leaders, because it helps our community while they're here, but it helps with our alumni when they leave. They want to stay engaged, and it helps everybody, no matter where they land after they leave Miami University, that they stay involved, that they are civically, aware, curious, engaged, all of those things. So, and that they have some experience that helps them continue to make a positive difference in their work life, in their home life, in their community. So that's kind of what we're hoping for.
Oh, thank you. That actually sounds like a really promising partnership between you all. So I'm really glad they ended up under that umbrella. All right, one question before we wrap up. Seeing as sort of COVID restrictions are lifting, do you anticipate the Greek Spring Clean to be back in 2022? Yes, awesome, great. I think there are some folks around here who really appreciate those efforts. Well, thank you so much to the two of you, Dr. Kim Vance and Adam Drawley. We are so appreciative for you having been here today and participating with us in yet another really great virtual alumni weekend session, I should say. Just one programming note, the next session up on the books, Miami Presents Alumni Weekend, A Taste of Peru, sponsored by the Latin Alumni Group. That was to happen at 5:00 today, has actually been postponed due to a family emergency. So we will work with the Latin Alumni Group to reschedule that session and then send an updated date and time when that is available. Thank you for your understanding. We do appreciate that. And on behalf of the Miami University Alumni Association, thank you so much for joining us. Love and honor to you all. Thank you again, Kim and Adam. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.